The world doesn't announce itself when it's about to change you. It doesn't send a letter, it doesn't flash a warning across the screen of your phone. One moment, you're sitting in the half-light of a Tuesday afternoon, your hand resting on the arm of a chair you've had for 7 years, and the next, something shifts. Not outside of you, but inside. A kind of quiet rearrangement of the furniture in the room of your skull. And you don't even notice it happening, because you're too busy thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, or replaying that awkward conversation from 3 days ago, or wondering why they haven't texted back. But in that moment, beneath the surface noise of your own inner monologue, your brain just did something extraordinary. Something that, for most of human history, was completely invisible to the person it was happening inside of. And that is the first secret: your brain is keeping a diary, and you are not the one writing in it. We like to think we are the authors of our own minds. That the voice we hear narrating our day, the one that sounds like us, the one that critiques, plans, worries, celebrates, is the captain of the ship. But the truth is far stranger and far more humbling. That voice? It's more like a passenger who got handed the map after the journey had already begun. What you are about to experience, if you let yourself go there, is the slow, deliberate unraveling of that illusion. Not through philosophy or self-help books, but through something far more ancient and far more precise: a mirror held up to the machinery of your own consciousness. And here's the thing about mirrors: when you look into one long enough, you stop seeing your face, and you start seeing the mechanism of seeing itself. That's the territory we're stepping into. Not just what you think, but the act of thinking. Not just the memory, but the architecture that builds it. And once you see it, once you feel it, you cannot unsee it. Because your brain, for all its mystery, is about to be forced to show you exactly what it's made of. Imagine, for a moment, that you are sitting in a dark theater. The screen in front of you is blank, but you can hear the faint hum of the projector warming up. You're waiting for the movie to start, the one you came to see, the one with the familiar actors and the predictable plot. But instead, a different kind of image flickers to life. It's not a story about someone else. It's a story about you. And not the polished, edited version you tell at dinner parties. It's the raw footage. The moment you tripped on the sidewalk last year and pretended you meant to do it. The sound of your own voice saying something you regretted before you could stop it. The shape of a room from your childhood that you haven't thought about in decades, suddenly rendered in such vivid detail you can almost smell the carpet. This is not a memory exercise. This is what happens when the lens turns inward with enough precision. The brain, you see, has spent your entire life building a vast library of maps, maps of the world, maps of your relationships, maps of who you are and who you are not. But those maps are not reality. They are simplifications, useful fictions that help you navigate a chaotic world without being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information flooding in through your senses every second. And that is the first real crack in the wall. Because if those maps are simplifications, then who is doing the simplifying? And more importantly, what happens when you realize you have the power to redraw them? There's a reason we talk about the mind as if it's a fortress, with walls and gates and a central command. But the truth is, it's more like a coral reef, a living, breathing ecosystem built slowly over time by countless tiny creatures, each one operating beneath the threshold of awareness. Your thoughts, your habits, your fears, your quietest hopes, they are all structures that were built, layer by layer, often without your explicit permission. And just like a coral reef, they can grow in beautiful, intricate patterns, or they can become brittle and break. But here's the secret the experts know, the one that changes everything: the reef can be reshaped. Not with force, not with willpower alone, but with a kind of patient, attentive curiosity that most of us have never been taught to apply to the contents of our own skull. You are going to feel it soon. That strange sensation of something coming into focus. It might start as a simple question, one you've never actually asked yourself with real intent. What is the shape of the space between a thought and the next thought? Not the thoughts themselves, the space. If you try to grab it, it vanishes. If you name it, it becomes something else. But if you just sit in it, with no agenda, something begins to happen. The machinery slows down. The frantic chattering voice that tells you you're not doing enough, not being enough, not feeling enough, it doesn't disappear, but it becomes background noise. And for a moment, you are not the noise. You are the space. And in that space, there is a kind of freedom that no external circumstance can give you and no external circumstance can take away. This is not mysticism. This is neuroscience meeting direct experience. This is the moment when the brain, which has been running its programs on autopilot since you woke up this morning, is finally given a different instruction: pause. Just for a second. And in that pause, the secret it has been hiding in plain sight begins to surface. What is that secret? It's not a single fact you can write down on a sticky note. It's an experience. It's the recognition that the story you have been telling yourself about who you are, the one with the protagonist, the setbacks, the triumphs, the endless internal monologue, is not actually you. It is a story. A brilliant, complex, often beautiful story, but a story nonetheless. And the part of you that can notice the story? That part is older, deeper, more fundamental than any story could ever be. In the world of filmmaking, they call it the frame. The image on the screen changes constantly: joy, sorrow, terror, peace, but the screen itself remains untouched. It holds everything and is changed by nothing. You are not the image. You are the screen. And for most of your life, you have been so captivated by the images that you forgot the screen was even there. There is a reason this is so hard to see. Your brain is, quite literally, designed to prevent you from seeing it. Evolution did not shape your neural architecture to give you a sense of cosmic unity or existential clarity. Evolution shaped your brain to keep you alive long enough to pass on your genes. And to do that, it built a relentless narrative engine, one that constantly scans for threats, catalogs resources, predicts outcomes, and weaves all of it into a coherent story with you at the center. This is not a flaw, it's a masterpiece of biological engineering. But it's a masterpiece that comes with a hidden cost. The cost is that you mistake the map for the territory. You mistake the voice in your head for the person listening to it. And you live your entire life inside a simulation that your own brain constructed, never once realizing that you have the capacity to step outside of it. But stepping outside is not a matter of effort. You cannot force your way out of your own mind by trying harder. That would be like trying to lift a chair while sitting on it. The way out is through a kind of radical permission. Permission to let the thoughts be there without chasing them. Permission to feel the feelings without needing to fix them. Permission to not know. And in that permission, something remarkable happens. The brain, when it is not being forced into a particular shape, begins to relax into its natural intelligence. And its natural intelligence is not the frantic problem solving we associate with thinking. It is a vast, open awareness, one that can hold complexity without being overwhelmed, one that can see the patterns of your own suffering without being consumed by them. This is the moment the story turns. Because up until now, you have been looking for answers outside of yourself. In books, in teachers, in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next moment when everything will finally click into place. But the secret your brain has been holding, the one it shows you when you finally stop running, is that the answer is not somewhere else. It is in the very act of looking. The seeker is the sought. The one who wants to wake up is the one who is already awake, just obscured by the noise of the wanting. You can feel this, right now. Not as a concept, but as a shift in the body. A softening. A letting go of something you didn't even realize you were holding. And in that letting go, the grip of the narrative loosens just enough for you to see the space behind it. This is where we encounter the paradox that most people never get close to, because it sounds too simple. The more you try to understand your brain, the more it eludes you. But the moment you stop trying to understand it and simply pay attention to it, without judgment, without expectation, it begins to reveal itself. Not in words, but in a kind of direct knowing. You start to notice the way a thought arises from nowhere, lingers for a moment, and then dissolves back into nowhere. You notice the way an emotion is not a solid thing but a wave of sensation moving through the body, changing shape, losing intensity, fading. You notice the way you have been taking ownership of these transient phenomena, calling them my thoughts and my feelings, when in fact they are just weather patterns passing through the sky of your awareness. And then comes the deeper revelation. If you are not your thoughts, and you are not your feelings, and you are not even the voice that seems to be narrating your life, then what are you? This is the question that has driven mystics and philosophers for millennia, but it is also the question that neuroscience is now beginning to answer in its own way. The sense of a separate self, the I that seems to be located somewhere behind the eyes, running the show, this is not a thing. It is a process. A construction. A brilliantly crafted illusion generated by the brain to help you navigate a world of other selves. But the illusion is so convincing, so seamless, that you never think to question it. You go through your entire life believing you are a character in the movie, when in fact you are the entire cinema. So what happens when that illusion begins to crack? When you start to see the seams? The experience is not what most people expect. It is not a loss, it is a relief. Imagine carrying a heavy suitcase around with you for decades, a suitcase that contains every story you've ever told yourself about who you are, what you're worth, what you should be afraid of, what you need to prove. Now imagine putting that suitcase down. Not throwing it away, just putting it down. The feeling is not emptiness. It is lightness. It is the sudden, astonishing realization that you don't have to carry all of that weight through every moment of your life. The stories can still be there, but they no longer dictate your movement. You are not the suitcase. You are the one who is carrying it. This is what your brain has been hiding from you, not out of malice, but out of efficiency. It was too busy keeping you alive to tell you that you were free. But now, in this moment, as you sit here listening to these words, the machinery is shifting. The default mode network, the network of brain regions that is active when you are not focused on the outside world, when you are ruminating or daydreaming or constructing the story of self, it begins to quiet. Not because you are forcing it, but because you are giving it something better to do. You are giving it attention. And attention, when it is not captured by thought, becomes a kind of solvent. It dissolves the structures that seem so solid. It reveals the underlying reality that was always there, hidden beneath the noise. And as that reality begins to emerge, you start to notice something even more unexpected. The world outside of you changes, too. Not literally, but your experience of it changes. Colors seem richer. Sounds seem clearer. The faces of people you love seem to hold a depth you never noticed before. Because for the first time, you are not looking at them through the filter of your own story, your judgments, your fears, your expectations. You are looking at them as they are. And in that seeing, a kind of natural compassion arises. Not the forced, performative compassion of trying to be a good person, but a spontaneous tenderness that comes from recognizing that they, too, are carrying a suitcase. They, too, are trapped in a story. They, too, have forgotten that they are the screen and not the image. This is the territory we are moving into now. Not a theory, not a philosophy, but a lived reality that you can taste, even if only for a moment. And the moment you taste it, something shifts permanently. You can never fully go back to believing that the voice in your head is all there is. You have seen the space around it. And once you've seen the space, the voice loses its absolute authority. It becomes one voice among many. Still there, still useful, still capable of generating brilliant insights and terrible worries, but no longer the king. Just a character in a much larger story, a story you are now watching with a kind of affectionate curiosity rather than desperate identification. And this is where we come to the final secret, the one your brain only reveals when you have stopped trying to extract it. There is no final secret. There is no moment of permanent arrival, no state you can achieve where you never again get caught in the story. The brain is a living system, always moving, always adapting. The freedom is not in reaching a destination, it is in the movement itself. It is in the repeated, patient act of returning. Of noticing that you have been captured by a thought and gently, without judgment, releasing it. Of remembering that you are the space and not the noise. Of choosing, again and again, to put the suitcase down. And that is the real skill. Not enlightenment, not transcendence, but presence. The simple, radical act of being here, now, without needing it to be different than it is. This is what forces your brain to show its secrets, not because you demand them, but because you create the conditions in which the secrets can reveal themselves. And when they do, what they show you is not a collection of facts. It is a way of being. A way of being that was always available to you, hidden in plain sight, waiting for you to stop searching long enough to see. But here is the thing about seeing it: once you do, you start to realize that this isn't just a private experience. It changes how you move through the world. The conversations you have, the work you do, the way you respond when things fall apart. You begin to notice that most people are still asleep in their stories, and you feel a deep, quiet respect for that, because you were there, too, not so long ago. And you realize that the most generous thing you can do for them is not to wake them up, but to be awake yourself. To hold a space where waking up is possible. To let your own presence be a kind of invitation, not a demand. And then, slowly, you start to see that this is the whole game. Not achieving anything, not becoming anyone, but waking up to what you already are. A presence. An awareness. A capacity to hold the full range of human experience, joy, grief, fear, love, without being broken by any of it. This is what your brain has been preparing you for your entire life, through every heartbreak, every triumph, every quiet moment you thought meant nothing. It was all leading here. Not to a conclusion, but to a beginning. To the first real step you've ever taken, not towards something, but into what already is. And as you sit with that, in the silence that follows these words, you might notice something. The voice that was narrating this story, the one you thought was me, the writer, is not the only voice in the room. There is another voice. The one that is hearing these words. The one that is noticing the weight of your body in the chair, the quality of the light in the room, the space between one breath and the next. That voice is not the one you have been listening to your whole life. It is the one that was always listening. And now, for the first time, it has your full attention.